But to answer your question, there is no better formula than you asked what are the other ways. There is no other way. This is the best way of doing it. I've literally spent 20,000 hours thinking about this problem, and I can tell you that there is no more efficient way of doing it. And what I can tell you is that your sales pitch has an incredible borderline illegal impact on, like, it. Sometimes when we showed the results to our clients, they say, how is this even possible? Like, how is it possible that by explaining to people what makes, like, how we designed this product, we are getting such a high conversion impact?
The founder whom you're talking to is a customer who has faced the same problem but has
Exactly.
already found a solution.
That is very correct. That's a really good point. And it's the most valuable customer because he cared about the problem so much that he left his
Yeah.
job and went through 47 prototypes.
So you'll find no better customer to talk about the product or the
That's a great
solution.
point, Aman. Great point. Yeah.
So tell us what consumers really care about.
I think customers care about, the thing that they care about the most is value for money. They want to buy, they care about buying products that are truly great and can do what is being promised that they can do, and gives them good value for money. I think that's the thing that we focus on communicating all the time.
Hey everyone, welcome to this new episode of Consumers Don't Care. And today we are going to talk to someone who calls himself a Shopify product page guy. But despite working on websites, online, on internet, his work style is inspired a lot from retail stores and QVCs. And in today's episode, we are going to dive deep into buyer psychology, like conversion rate optimization. So stick till the end, and at the end of this episode, I am sure that you will walk away with some super interesting insight that will exponentially increase the number of buyers that purchase from your website. So I'm like really happy to invite you, Rishi. Welcome to the show.
Aman, thank you for the invitation. I'm very much looking forward to sharing everything that I've learned. And I hope that your listeners and you and anyone involved will get some value out of it.
Definitely, Rishi. I'm super happy because conversion rate optimization is a topic that is again. So, in general, what I try to do in this podcast is uncover or talk about the topics which is really common but generally misunderstood. And conversion rate optimization is no far from that. So, this is really interesting. And why I wanted to talk to you is because your approach to conversion rate optimization is something different from what generally I see on the web. So people how they talk about conversion rate optimization, you do something different. One thing I saw you talking about a lot is worrying about the 16% of people who are not purchasing from your website. So I saw you gave an example where if your conversion rate is 4%, then you don't have to worry about the 86%, 96% of the people who are not purchasing, because in general 80% of the people won't even purchase. And what you need to actually worry about is the 16% of people that are leaning in so they can purchase. I'll just hand over the desk to you now, and I want you to speak about it.
Yeah. We will get to the 16%. But before that, I also want to let the listeners know that I have made every mistake under the sun when it comes to conversion optimization. It's not like I had this great insight that no one had. What happened was that I've been doing this for a really long time. One of the benefits of doing something for a very long time is you have the breathing room to make all the mistakes. And so I am now at a stage where I don't make mistakes, but that doesn't mean that I didn't make mistakes, right? I made more mistakes than the average person. And what I'm trying to get at over here is that when we started with conversion optimization, we were trying to move all the levers, all. It's kind of like having access to a nuclear power plant. If you've seen those movies, they have like all of these buttons in the nuclear power plant, and someone just gave me access to it, so I started playing with all the buttons, and I caused nuclear meltdowns, I caused nuclear explosions. But in that process, you learn a few things. So when we started with conversion optimization, we didn't even know where to start, so we focused on the home page. Then we didn't know what to do, so we would focus on redesigning the home page. And through that whole process, we realized that there were some things that were getting results, especially UI, UX, or design based changes, where, for example, we would add a message on the assurance messaging on the cart page, or maybe change the flow of the checkout, and we would notice a short term bump in conversion rates, but over time it would balance out. And so I'm a lazy guy, and I don't think clients should be paying for a service where they have a short term gain, but then they aren't able to reproduce those gains later on. So I started thinking about, okay, of the experiments that I'm running, I created a matrix of effort versus outcome. Now, when we do a redesign of a product page, that there's a lot of effort involved in that. So we have to get the designer involved. We have to then instrument that new page using the testing tool, which is not easy to do. But the most complicated part of that is we have to get the buy-in from the client, because oftentimes these critical pages have been designed by the CEO, or at least the CEO had a say in the matter, so they are emotionally connected to it. So when you go to them and say, hey, your layout sucks, here's a better layout, they take offense to that. So there are all of these reasons why it was very complicated, so the effort is very high. But on the flip side, on the other end of the equation, when I would look at the impact wasn't that amazing either. And so I said, well, this we shouldn't do. And then I started going through all the experiments, and what I realized, Aman, is that the experiments where we were talking about the product itself had the biggest impact, or how we were telling what the describing the product. What I mean is, on the product page there are many variables. You have the image gallery, you have the product description, you have the layout of the page, you have the review section, you add video content. And what we realized was that the way the product is described was having a sustained impact on conversion rates. And this is a key word, sustained impact. And what that means is that when we would implement it, if we would run the experiment again after 6 months, it would generate the same kind of lift, which tells us that this is something that actually makes a difference. And if you really think about it logically, it absolutely makes sense. If I'm buying a vacuum cleaner, why does the layout of the page, yes, those are nice things to have, but at the end of the day, what I really care about is, like, is this a good vacuum cleaner? That is my fundamental question as a consumer. If a brand can do a very compelling job of connecting with me emotionally and helping me come to the conclusion that my vacuum cleaner is better than every other alternative for that price point, then I'm going to buy. It's as simple as that. Maybe sometimes I'll buy if you have a flashy video. Maybe sometimes I'll buy if it looks like a, really beautiful, responsive website. But that's very few times. But I will every time buy if you describe the product in a very compelling way, and if I agree with the way you're describing it. So to me, that became the lever that we wanted to play with.
Hey guys, I'd like to catch your attention for a second here. I see more than 80% of the viewers who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel yet. So if you're one of them who love watching these videos, these interviews, and find these insightful, then I request you to please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you get notified whenever I upload a new interview. And it also motivates me to create more such videos and helps me to invite more people who can share insightful information with you. So please consider subscribing to the channel if you love it. And yeah, back to the video. Sure, Rishi. If you talk about talking more about the product made the highest amount of difference in conversions, sustained impact. So, is it like you're talking about messaging? Like, what are you trying to convey, and whom are you trying to convey? Trying to change the ICP. So, how does this entire thing looks? Because when you say talking about your product in a compelling way, we sometimes believe that we'll talk about the product, but it can be more about the audience than the product, or how this product is for this audience. So how do you go about it?
That's a great question. So I deal with this with clients all the time. So my solution is that, first of all, let's on a piece of paper, let's not worry about the final outcome. Let's, on a piece of paper, just write down, imagine in your mind that the person you are trying to sell to is willing to spend 2 hours reading your description. Of course, that's unreasonable, but for this thought experiment, let's assume that. With that in mind, I would just write the description. So, Aman, you bring up a very good point. You talked about, like, hey, should we be talking about the product, or should we talk about the person who is buying the product? So, to me, I look at them as being steps in a ladder. Okay. I think ultimately the best copy in the world is copy that is about the buyer. Okay. But you don't get there right away. And in fact, if you get to that point right away, you end up with something that's very hollow. So you actually have to start off by talking about the product, because that is the thing that the entrepreneur actually understands, right? They understand they're a world expert. They are Einstein for the product that they are selling. So that is where you need to start. I think what you are describing is what we call copy shaping. And this is where we then start massaging the copy to make sure that the reader feels that they are part of the adventure as well. But the place to start is by describing the product itself. And I think one of the and I you know I think one of the great analogies that will really help the listener or the viewer understand how to write the copy or how they should think about the copy is to imagine that you are a doctor and the buyer is a patient. And this is not an unreasonable dynamic, because you know so much more about the product than the patient does, or than the buyer does. And if you think about your relationship with your doctor, I can certainly speak about my relationship with my doctor. I go to the doctor and I explain to the doctor what my problem is, and then I listen to what the doctor is saying, because in all likelihood, whatever that problem is that I'm describing to my doctor, it is something that he has dealt with 100 times and knows 100 times more than I do. And we have this dynamic where he will recommend something to me and I will just follow that prescription, not because he is better than me in everything, but because when it comes to medical diagnosis, he knows so much more than I do. And I think if you think about your relationship with your buyer similar to the relationship a doctor has with a patient, it actually makes sense. If I am trying to buy a vacuum cleaner, I have a problem, and I don't really know everything there is to know about how vacuum cleaners work and what makes something special. I want you to really wow me with your knowledge and your expertise about vacuum cleaning. I don't want you to tell me that, oh my god, you are talk to me like I'm so smart and I'm so wonderful and I know everything there is to know about vacuum cleaning. No, I don't. I'm coming to you because I need expertise. And so that's where I would start. Once you've done that and you've experimented that version and you found it's doing well, then yes, layer by layer, slowly you want to pull back on you being exclusively. So basically, the way we think about it is when you first describe your product, describe it like you are the hero of the story. But then over time, as you start tweaking the copy and refining it and making it better in subsequent experiments, you need to change your position from being the hero of the story to being the guide in the story, and have the buyer be the hero. But that is a journey. And I think it's very important that the first draft, you need to actually have something within you first before you can start presenting a story from the perspective of the buyer.
So, Rishi, one thing I would like to ask you: are there? You already spoke about efforts being put in conversion rate optimization as a process. So, if you can identify some experiments which are high effort, like low effort to high ROI type of experiments, which can be generalized. So if anyone in my audience is having an apparel store, if someone is selling supplements, so anything that they can look at a very high ROI experiment and they can start thinking about it.
Yeah, that's a great question. There are 3 or 4 ideas that I'll share. So, if you have an About Us page, or if you have some About Us content, then I would recommend look at the go to your analytics and look at the create a segment of people that went to your About Us page or saw your About Us content, and look at the conversion impact of that page, compare it to your overall site average. And what you will find, I can guarantee this, is that the conversion impact of your About Us page is far higher than your site average. The next thing I want you to look at is what percentage of people that came to your website came to your About Us page. And here also, I will make a prediction. And my prediction is that it's going to be a very small number, probably less than 10%. Now, with those two insights, my simple recommendation is, what that insight is telling us is that when people know more about the people behind a company, there is a correlation, they convert at a higher rate. We also know that almost nobody ever discovers the story about the people behind the company. So the solution is very simple. On your product page, if your readers are looking for a very high impact, simple concept, on all of your product pages, add a little button that says, or some kind of block that says, if you're new here, let me tell you who we are, or some variation of that. And what's going to happen is that people who are new to the website and are, this is a technique called a scent trail, SCENT trail. What I mean is that when you can mirror the question that is in the reader's mind, that is when they start clicking the CTA. So what's going to happen is that people that don't care about your story, these are the kind of people that, like you said, the product sells itself. We don't need to worry about those people. If your conversion rate is 4%, that means 4% of people don't need any further explanation. Why would I want to disturb them? So forget them. But the other people that are not buying because they're like, who is Aman? Why should I listen to Aman? I don't understand why Aman's supplement is any good. They will probably be interested in clicking that call to action. And then you can, as a light box, don't take people away from the product page. This is a very simple idea. I don't know why brands do it. Why do you take someone, if someone is on the product page and you're giving them supplemental information, bring that information to them. Don't make the user go to that information. Now, so what, this is a simple experiment where all you are doing is you're taking your about us content and you're bringing it to the product page. So you are asking for low effort, high impact idea. This is one. Let me give you two more, and then you can ask me questions. The second idea is that if you one of the biggest mistake that we make as marketers is that we are always trying to figure out averages. What is the average length of description that the reader wants to read? This is a stupid question, because averages lie. The average between, what is the average between a man and a woman? It's nothing. So therefore averages you can't rely on. So what I'm trying to get at is that because we've been so fixated on averages, we've asked other marketers and we've polled our customers and we've read research papers on what is the average amount of length of description that the person wants to read. And the answer is like, let's say 5 or 6 sentences. So that is the reason why we've come up with bullet points. Like if you go to Amazon, right? Amazon will show a product and it'll say, here are 5 things you need to know about this product. That's it. End of description, right? Unless if they have like a A1 plus page, that's the end of the description. Now, I have a very simple technique for conversion technique for anyone listening, which is that it is correct that some people like to skim and some people like to read the whole details. Remember, there are people, people say no one reads. And I would argue, I can binge watch Netflix. I spend hours watching TV shows I like. So who are these people that don't have more than 5 minutes? I think the real response is that people don't like to read boring stuff. People don't like to read stuff that's not interesting. But if it's interesting, they will definitely read it. So my solution, again, you're asking for a low effort, high impact idea. I have a very simple idea. On your product page, write a short description, and below that description, just have 2 buttons. One button. So basically the description is going to be like, here is my vacuum cleaner. It's amazing. We've spent 4 years developing it. We think you'd really like it. And then you say, hey, before I tell you the whole description, I have a question for you. How much time do you have today? And then have 2 buttons. One says I have 2 minutes and one says I have time. What happens is, let me ask you, Aman, who do you think is going to click on I have 2 minutes?
A lot of people
No, but what kind of person will click on 2 minutes?
who just wants to make a purchase, like who is ready
That's
to
right. They
purchase.
don't. Right. So they're the kind of person who wants to just cut to the chase, like wants
Yeah.
just the highlights. But the person who says, you know what, I want to really, really understand what makes your vacuum cleaner special, they will probably click on I have time. And your point is very valid, which is that this is the beauty, is that we are now no longer betting on any one idea, right? We're not saying that, oh, let's have just bullet points. We are basically saying, let's give both the paths. When someone clicks on I have 2 minutes, just show them the bullet points. But when someone says I have time, show them a very long description, cover everything. Because now you don't have to constrain yourself. Now the user has told you that, boss, I want to know everything there is to understand about a vacuum cleaner. And so here, my point is that why are we compromising on the product page? Why not just give both the paths to the person? So anyway, you were asking for ideas. So these are the two ideas that I can easily share that basically are low effort and high impact. So there's no reason for someone not to experiment with them.
Sounds great. I think for people not experimenting with the second idea could be the reason that many believe we should have only one button on on a product page,
Yeah,
which
people are
will
wrong. They are wrong.
they, like, which would
This is the stupidest idea because this whole idea of friction is bad for you. My business's name is Frictionless Commerce, so I understand what friction means.
yeah.
Um, my point is that there is a difference between, you know, these okay, dieting. You have to do a lot of hard things like stopping to eat food when you have the impulse to eat food, right? So you know that is also a form of friction because you're having to constantly remind yourself, right? So my point is that please get away from this idea. I don't know who infected marketers with this idea that if you have 5 buttons on a page and if you somehow reduce it to one button, your conversion rates will go up. I've never seen evidence of this. This is absolutely not true. Yes, if you're going to unnecessarily add unnecessary barriers, then yes. And if they have no purpose, then yes. But in this case, something very important is happening. In this case, the user is you're allowing the user to tell you how they want you to describe the product. This is not called friction for me. This is called customer service. So to me, I don't consider this to be friction. And anyone who has a problem with adding 2 buttons to a page, I think you're focusing on the wrong things.
Yeah, I think that's it's kind of it's supplementing what you are actually trying to do. If you are trying to get more people to click on your add to cart button, maybe adding a button which would explain them more about the product will help instead of like trying to waver their focus and trying to sell some other product.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And I think this is why copywriting is so important. So the sentence that you have above the button, it really plays an important role. Because if you explain to the buyer what's in it for them, then their perception is different, right? So I think the copy really makes a difference.
Coming to the copy, I just had a curious question. So many a times we try to build a website or like, and it's common with no matter what we do, we do an email or something. So we try to add a button there, and basically what I go through the thought is like, do we keep a shop now button? Do we keep on add to cart button? Add to cart button is self-explanatory, so you generally have it. But do you keep a shop now button, shop the sale button, or like, do you play with it, or do you stick to the basics? What is your approach as an expert in conversion?
I mean, this is not my area of expertise. I'm a very controversial thinker in this on this thing. The one suggestion I would give is I really like the language around learn more button, because it is educational. And I think depending on where the user is in the funnel, they actually don't want to think, because we know what shopping means. Shopping means I will be begging for your credit card, right? So that is a big turn off for the buyer. But learn more is, I think, a very nice soft term. And I think even if you take people to the product page, you can use learn more to take people to the product page. um, but you can also take them to educational content. So that's what I would say. But I would say that instead of, my recommendation to the listeners is, if you have 100 hours in your day, don't spend anything more than 4 minutes thinking about what the button CTA should say. I don't think it's as important as we think it is. I think the bigger question you have to ask yourself is, why do I exist? Why do I get out of bed? Why does my website exist? Why should anyone ever buy from me? And I think a lot of times we don't ask those questions. We say, oh my God, Amazon is eating our lunch. Oh my God, no one is buying my product. Oh my God, people are leaving bad reviews. And to me, it's like you have to really think about, like, why are people leaving bad reviews? Why are people not buying the product? And the reason I'm saying this, Aman, is because when I interview founders, it is amazing to me when I read their description. So before I go on a call with the founder, I read the product page description and I make a picture of who they are. And then I talk to them, and then I interview them and I ask them to tell me about who they are and why they make this product. And the stories they tell me are incredible. They talk about many years of struggle. They talk about prototypes that they made. They talk about the frustration of buying other products that never worked. And I'm like, why isn't this story being told to people? And sometimes they'll say, like, well, they'll say two things. They'll say, oh, I don't want to like make this about me. I was like, but you have to remember, the person who's coming to you, they have a problem, right? It doesn't matter what the product is. Let's say you're selling ties, right? The tie you wear with a suit, right? Well, for the person who's coming to your website, they have a problem. They're looking for a good tie. So to them, your story about why you started a tie company is very relevant. So don't be shy of sharing that story. In fact, you're doing them a disservice by not sharing it. But the other thing is also that it demonstrates how much of an expert you are about that problem, right? So there's a whole bunch of reasons why. So my point is that all of this needs to be communicated to the buyer. And sometimes this is the other thing CEOs tell me. They say, we've already told the story. Well, the person who's the most important audience on my website is are new people who have never come to my website before. We're not trying to sell to people that bought from us 2 years ago. We're not trying to sell to other brands that also make ties, right? We're trying to sell to this cold traffic that clicked on my Facebook ad and came to my product page. These people don't know a damn thing about you. So you're not repeating your story by just because you talked about this 3 years ago in a newsletter does not mean that everyone who's coming to your website knows this. So get away from this mindset that, hey, I've already told the story before.
Is this also because there's an underlying like problem that founders are underselling their efforts?
This is exactly it. This is exactly right. They are underselling their efforts. Sometimes I ask founders a very interesting question. I ask them that, founders are irrational people, right? They are just passionate about, they want to make a new pair of shoes, right? They've designed it and everything. And now they're feeling guilty, oh, it's $170 I'm charging, it's too much money. They spend half their day thinking about that. I sometimes ask them, let's do some math. Can you tell me what you were doing before you started this company? Oh, I was like a senior executive in this company. Okay. So you left this job? Yeah, I left this job to pursue this. I said, how many years did it take you to work through all the prototypes and everything? Oh my God, it took me 3 years. And so I asked them, like, how many hours a week, how many hours a day are you working? Oh, I'm working like 12 hours a day. Okay. And do you work on the weekends? Oh yeah, I work on the weekends also. I said, let me just add up all the hours divided by how much how much your revenue is. And when you really look at the hourly rate, it's like they're making like $10 an hour. Because not because It's because they spend so much time thinking about it. So my point is that they are significantly undervaluing all of the effort that has gone into it, and they are fixating on the fact that, I did a survey and my customers told me $170 for a pair of shoes is too much money. Well, the thing is that you can do another survey, you can sell shoes for $4, and people will respond and say, $4 is too much money, boss, it should be $2. There is no end to this. So you must focus on where you think the value is. And most people will not agree with where the value is, but most people are not going to buy anyway. But if you're converting 4% of people and you can explain the value more clearly and get 8% of people to buy, that is doubling of your revenue, and that's a good place to be.
Hmm. Also, Rishi, let's take an example. Let's visualize someone like I just created a website. I just created a Shopify store, and we started our ads. We are starting to sell some products. Like we are starting to get 3 to 5 orders a day, so it's good. It's healthy. Now I want to increase my conversion rate from 1%. Currently, it's 1%. I want to increase the conversion rate from 1%. I know I want to increase. I know how I could do it, but I don't know what should I do to do it. Like, what's the process? What's the framework? Or where should I start first? Sometimes I think like the banner looks a bit clumsy. I need to fix the banner. But then again, you feel like, okay, this is also not looking great. Maybe I could play around with it and
Mm.
see how to do it. What is the framework that someone should follow if they're starting out? How should they approach optimizing conversion rate?
So, I mean, good question, Aman. And to me, there's a, have you heard the quote that, to a man who's holding a hammer, the world is full of nails, right? So to me, it's everything that you're asking leads to the same problem, which is who am I, what do I stand for, and how am I different and better? That is the fundamental damn question. And so everything else in your website, your homepage doesn't look good, the banner doesn't look good, it doesn't load well, I don't care. None of those things matter. The thing that matters is just two variables. Number one is, do I have a compelling story about who I am, why I exist, why I am better than competitors? And number two is that what percentage of people are engaging with the story? Because if people are not engaging with the story, then you have a discovery problem. It is inconceivable that you are selling a product and your customers don't care about your story. So if 1% of people are discovering your story, then that is clear evidence that you are almost invisible. You need to do a better job having them. So there are just two variables that I focus on, Aman. Variable number one is making sure that I can get more people to discover my story. And variable number two is the conversion impact of that story. So I am looking for a massive conversion impact on that story, because if the story is not converting, then that means your story sucks. And so we have to keep on tweaking it, refining it till it converts the way it will. Because remember, if again, I don't know if your audience is in India or abroad, but I mean, you look at any classic movie, the reason why those movies become super duper hits is because the script was amazing. I guarantee you, you take that same movie and go to an average script writer, the movie's going to flop in the box office. So the way the story is constructed, at what point the hero is introduced, how the hero is introduced, what the hero means to the audience, the drama, the story arc, all of these things matter a lot. So the story, one of the biggest mistakes that I think brands make is they think that they've created an about us page, or they've created an about us content, therefore the job is done. This is not true. You have to keep on tweaking it, you have to keep on refining it. I have been updating and refining my homepage for the last 5 years. And the reason for that is that every day when I wake up, I don't pray to God, I meditate to think about, like, who am I, why do I exist, and I get insights. And I use those insights to tweak and refine and improve my sales page. And so the same thing has to happen on your website. The most sacred part of your entire website is your sales page. If people are not being romanced by your sales page, and if they are not converting based on your sales page, you have already lost.
And so you talk about people discovering about your story. So how different it is from people discovering your website?
Well, I mean, it's different, right? Because when people discover the website, when they first discover a website, they are searching. Well, there are different ways of discovering a website, right? If we're talking about coming through a ad that they've clicked on, or coming through a Google search. So let's look at both. If they are doing a Google search, they are looking for um, comfortable work shoes, right? So they're describing a problem, and Google is showing them a bunch of ads or whatever it is. They're clicking on that, so they're really problem focused, right? um, so that's how they're discovering you. So your website is really about confirming to them that you understand their problem and that you have a solution for their problem. But that is not enough to make the sale. In order to make the sale, you have to communicate to them also that you are competent, you are an expert at solving that problem, that you have credibility, that you've used the best materials. So the about us page, or the about us content, is designed to essentially communicate those ideas, right? Similarly, if you're on Facebook and you see an ad, I mean, the ad is either making a promise or it's highlighting a problem. So people are only reacting to the fact that they agree with this problem, or the fact that they want to see this outcome. But it's not telling how that outcome is being achieved and why you. So that content still has to be addressed in your story page or your sales page.
So what I can understand from what you said is you want people to visit your about, like just putting it in a layman's term, you want people to visit your about us page, make sure it is strong enough that it incentivizes the purchase, promises them that this solution is the best for them. So what percentage of people have you seen who visit a website and also visit a page, and what do you think one can do other than the tactics that you already told, that add some stuff on your product page without taking them away from the product page, add some stuff that tell you about the founder, their story, etc. So what other strategies or ways can you use to drive people to the about us page?
There is no strategy to drive people. That is the one I described to you, placing the call to actions at multiple locations on the product page. And let's not use the word product page. I focus on product pages, but you could have a landing page. Your home page could be your, where you are driving traffic. Wherever you are driving traffic, right? Whatever that core point is, where the user is deciding to buy from you or not buy from you, that is what I call the product page.
Mhm.
So whatever that core page is, place multiple call to actions. Don't just have one call to action, have multiple call to actions on the page at high visibility locations. And what we do is we set them up as conditional. And what that means, Aman, is that you click on any one of them and everything else becomes invisible. And what this does is it maximizes visibility while minimizing repetition. But to answer your question, there is no better formula. Then you asked what are the other ways. There is no other way. This is the best way of doing it. I've literally spent 20,000 hours thinking about this problem, and I can tell you that there is no more efficient way of doing it. And uh, the difficulty is not in placing the call to actions, right? The magic is in constructing a script that's going to win an Oscar. That is where the talent comes in. So I want the founders who are listening to this and the marketers who are listening to you to forget about all the bells and whistles and to focus on. I have a very simple challenge. If forget about what Rishi is saying, forget about how to place the CTAs for call to actions, forget about um, how do I get this conditional thing to work? None of this matters. On a Google sheet, write down your story, email it to me, and I will tell you in 2 minutes if it's a good story or not. Don't even worry about like changes to the website until you've nailed your story. So to me, your sales pitch is your most important asset. Focus on it, make sure it's the best sales pitch in the world. I think so. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, you can carry on if you have something to add. Even that's
No, no,
cool.
no. I see. I think that the reality is that there is only one path to the riches, and that path is the one I'm describing, which is having a very compelling sales pitch and then making sure that people discover that sales pitch. That's it. Those are just the two variables that I would focus on.
Mm, that's really interesting. So that's actually refreshing because it's quite different and like just the about us page. So easily it's the most neglected page. Not many think about it, and many just jot down anything they understand, anything they remember. They just jot it down in the about us page, and many just forget to add an about us page. So that's super interesting. And yeah, wanted to know from you. We have seen a lot of websites. You have seen a lot of great websites and great brands. So what is the percentage of people who actually visit the about us? I just want to know how big it is and how impactful it can be if you're just right away today
Yeah.
if you
So
run a website,
yeah,
then how impactful it would be if you start focusing more on about us page, like knowing about the volume of people they're actually visiting.
yeah. So I think what I have found is between 6 and 10% of people go to the About Us page. um, and this kind of makes sense. You have to remember 80% of people would never buy from you anyway, so you're only playing with 20% anyway. So the fact that 6 to 10% of people are going to your About Us page seems about right. Sometimes it's lower than 6%, sometimes it's close to 10%. Almost never is it more than 10%. So yeah, I mean, that's the number of percentage of people. The thing that I want listeners to understand is that this is something that we have basically, over the last 13 years, we have run, I would say, 2000 experiments, and I would say 98% of those experiments were focused on just these two variables. So I can tell you for a fact that your sales pitch, now I won't use the word about us, because about us is something that already is has a meaning for people. Like, people think about the about us page. I'm thinking more generally in terms of your sales pitch. And what I can tell you is that your sales pitch has an incredible, borderline illegal impact on, like, it. Sometimes when we showed the results to our clients, they say, how is this even possible? Like, how is it possible that by explaining to people what makes, like, how we designed this product, we are getting such a high conversion impact? because they just can't believe it, right? It has that kind of an impact. That's what I can say.
As per you, what does a sales pitch contain?
So the sales pitch is essentially, why we exist, why this product must exist, why you should listen to us, what gives us credibility. There are 9 different elements into a sales page that we like to. What you can do, Aman, is after the, below this in your show notes, you can include a link for an article where I talk about the 9 specific elements, the buyer psychology elements. You have to remember, I think there's a bigger point over here, which is that let's zoom out a little bit to understand what's happening. So from a customer's perspective, a customer is seeing, I did a math on this. I think it's 457 ads every day. So I've actually done the calculation for this. And I'm being very conservative. It's actually much more than that. But previously, I used to say 4,000. I read an article. Actually, there are multiple articles that source the same article that talks about 4 to 10,000 ads in a day. And I published this. I shared this, and someone said, there's no way that it's so high. You're exaggerating. So I said, you know what? Forget that. I'm actually going to do the math myself. And I literally looked at published numbers on publishing websites. So basically, MSNBC and CNN, to see how many banner ads they have and what the click-through rate is. And I kind of, based on that, I calculated this number. And publishing websites is a very, very small part of the overall advertising. So it's fair to say that the number is much, much higher. But the point is that even 457 ads in a day is a gigantic number. And so our brains have not evolved to process that kind of information. So we've developed shortcuts, right? And some of these shortcuts are so subconscious that the consumer is not even realize. It's kind of like your human resources department and you're getting 457 applicants every day. Okay. Do you think you're going to go through 457 resumes every day? Hell no. You're going to go through just keywords, right? And the moment you see certain keywords that are eliminating criteria, for example, the person says, I took a 3-year gap between jobs. Okay, reject, right? Now, it's not perfect system, but this is known as a mental heuristic that we have to use in order to process 457 resumes every day. So this is what consumers do. Now, consumers don't even realize. So the HR manager, when I ask them, why did you reject 98% of resumes? They actually don't even remember the rejection criteria. It is just something they've just got used to seeing. My point is that consumers also don't realize the methods that their brain is using to reject ads. So what I have done is I've reverse engineered to understand what the rejection criteria is, and our copywriting is designed to bypass that rejection criteria. So for example, one of the techniques that we have is we call labor illusion. And what that means is that when we are describing the product, we're not just describing the product that we are selling, but we're actually describing the amount of effort that we went into to create this product. So we'll talk about the failed prototypes. We'll include pictures of competitor shoes that we tried out, because what happens is that the brain is trying to figure out. So if you're selling something for $100, the brain is trying to figure out, is the $100 that I'm spending worth the effort? Like basically it's a trade-off between, trade-off between value and effort, right? So the brain is trying to find a signal that justifies or disqualifies the effort, right? So if the brain concludes that I could just as easily find shoes that are just as good as this for $80, they will not buy a shoe, right? But if you can somehow communicate to the brain that actually you're buying a pair of shoes for $100 where the actual value of this shoe was $140, then the brain is going to buy it. So the way you do that is by proving to the brain that I have looked at every running shoe that's in the marketplace. I have gone through 47 prototypes and everything has failed. And I've finally, with the 48th prototype, I created this. You know what this tells the brain? Here's what it tells the brain. It tells the brain that 47 failed prototypes happened, and all of this cost, you are not bearing it. You're just bearing the cost of the 48th one. Number two is that the brain is telling you that, boss, if we don't buy the shoe, if we spend 10 hours researching all of the other shoes that are out there, let's say our hourly rate is $10 an hour, I'm being very conservative, that is $100 right there. This person has already done that work for us. That means effectively the shoe is free, right? If we're selling it for $100. So like there are all of these heuristics and shortcuts that we use to communicate value to the buyer. So this is just one of the 9 variables that we use. So in your show notes, you can include a link to that article. I think people will find it very valuable.
That's really interesting. So just the depth of consumer psychology that one needs to understand to optimize for conversions is really interesting from what you say. It's not just about putting up a product page, pasting a little description about the product, but you'll need to deeply understand. And is it like to get an understanding of buyer psychology, if you're not an expert in conversion rate, a quick hack could be to talk to the customers directly. That makes the process easier.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, I don't want to get into controversy area. I do think there's a lot of value in talking to customers. Um, it is not something that I do actually. I am more in favor talking to the founder of the company. So if you are a founder, then I would say just on a piece of paper, write down your journey, and I think you'll get lots of interesting insights. But if you're a marketing manager, I would say talk to the founder of the company in your company. I think there's a lot of insights there. I think the customer angle, it's kind of like it's an add-on for the conversion lever, but I think the core of it's kind of like, imagine, again, I'm going back to the same examples, but imagine you're a film studio, right? One way to do it is say, okay, let me just interview customers who go for movies and say, what kind of movie do you want to watch? I think there's value in that, but I actually don't think this is where great movies are made. I think great movies are made by great directors who've hired great scriptwriters, and I think the customers validate a great movie. It doesn't happen the other way around. Not to say that customer feedback doesn't matter. I think absolutely does. I think there are certain stages of development of the movie where you can do a limited screening to see what parts of the story people liked, and people might say, hey, the last 10 minutes, it's too long, let's cut it out. And there's a lot, editing is very powerful as well. But in my mind, I believe that your story has to authentically come from you. um, and then your customers can help you shape it. This is why we run experiments, right? Ultimately, an experiment, an A/B test, is I am basically listening to the people who have credit cards. I don't really care. Once I've got the basic formula from the founder, I now no longer need to listen to the founder. I'm only listening to one person, who is a person who has a 16-digit credit card. If you are using a 16-digit credit card, then you are casting a vote every time you buy my product, because now I'm looking at control versus variation sales. So to me, that is the metric that I'm focused on. But I don't start with the customer. I actually start in by talking to the founder. So I'm not telling the listeners that don't do user research. My business partner is a world expert on user research, and he's very good at user research. So I don't want to suggest that user research doesn't matter. But I think that, I don't think we need to overly rely on user research. We have to really ask very fundamental questions like, what makes my product special? And I think that if you can't answer that question, no user research will help you.
What I just realized after I asked you this exact question is that the founder whom you're talking to is a customer who has faced the same problem but has
Exactly.
already found a solution.
That is very correct. That's a really good point. And it's the most valuable customer, because he cared about the problem so much that he left his
Yeah.
job and went through 47 prototypes.
So you'll find no better customer to talk about the product or the
That's a great
solution.
point, Aman. Great point. Yeah.
So, talking about CRO experiments or growth in conversion that you were able to pull it off, give us an example. I just want people to understand, with the ideology that you have and with the processes that you say, what are the kind of improvement or the scale that you were able to help people achieve. Any
Yeah.
numbers that you can publicly share, which is not a problem for you.
No problem. And I have lots of case studies. I'm fortunate that we've done so many experiments that we have lots of case studies. The great thing here is that if I think about, in the last even 2 years, if I think about the range of customers that we worked for, it is gigantic. We've worked for clients that sell a product for $2,700, to clients that are selling a sample pack for like $5, right? We have clients that are selling cosmetics. We have clients that are selling dog wheelchairs. We have clients that are selling golf sets. We have clients that are selling back pain machines. We have clients that are selling room air purifiers. Completely diverse products that have absolutely nothing in common. The only thing in common is that we've run the same damn experiment for all of them. And the only thing in common is that we've had the same kind of lift for each of these clients, each of these types of companies. So the kind of lift that you would expect is a 20% improvement in sales in 90 days. So where I'm talking specifically about, you know, we run experiments on the product page. If you're thinking about site-wide testing, typically it's a 10% improvement in overall sales. But if you're testing on your bestseller, it's a 20% improvement in 90 days. That is what you can expect.
20% and so 10% improvement on overall site rate. So for example, if my conversion rate today is 2%, and if I take your help, the strategy that you apply, I'll get to at least 2.2%
Yeah.
in a matter of few months.
Yeah, and we actually triangulate around revenue impact, not conversion rates, because ultimately my bosses, which are CEOs, I have 200 bosses. They don't care about conversion rates; they care about revenue impact, right? So if they're paying us X dollars, they want to see what kind of revenue impact it has. Because remember, you can game conversion rates quite a bit. So imagine like one of our clients sells a safe, these big metal things where you can like store a gun or something, right? They cost like $2,500, $3,000, but they also sell accessories, like little kind of digital lock and things like that. These cost like, they even sell t-shirts, by the way. My point is that those things cost like 1/50th of the safe. So if I did lots of conversion optimization magic and I really increase the sales of t-shirt, their conversion is going to go off the roof. They will still fire me because they don't care about selling t-shirts, right? So I care a lot about revenue impact.
That's really interesting, because if you have an ad, and if you have a product page with only the product in the page and nothing else, the conversion rate will be definitely high, but the revenues might not be, because you're not talking about anything else, you're not cross selling or something like that. So yeah, that's interesting. So you say the difference between conversion rate and revenue increase with the experiments that you do is primarily because you don't just focus on selling the bestseller, but also like doing a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think, usually the the increase in revenue correlates to the increase in conversion rate. So when we run an experiment, we are tracking for all of these vital signs, but our primary goal is revenue, because again, I want to avoid scenarios where we are selling lots and lots of inexpensive items. Because remember, the client sometimes for certain types of products, they have very low margins.
Yeah.
So if we are selling those margin, we are selling 10 times more of those low margin items versus, you know, high margin items, that's a problem. That is why we really focus on revenue. Because anyway, so to answer your question, it is not the end of the world if you track it based on conversion rates. It doesn't matter. Irrespective, you should see a 10% improvement in revenue and conversion. You want both to improve. You want conversion rates to correlatedly improve with revenue.
And how do you manage the wait time for the results that you are aiming to generate? If you're working with a DTC brand which is scaling fast, so generally the patients wouldn't be the most mind blowing. They are sometimes a lot impatient. How do you handle that? And yeah, just tell me, how do you handle that, and how do you help the client to handle that?
Yeah,
Not
good
just
question.
you.
It's sometimes it's a little hard. So what we do is we when a client, let's say a test has been running for 12 days, okay, and it's doing really well, and the CEO says, I want this implemented. So what we do is we show them the day by day conversion rates. And what they realize is that, oh, one day it was super high, and then one day it was super low, and then it was super low, and then it was super high. And they realize that it's kind of like just fluctuating randomly. So what we tell them is that it takes 2 to 3 weeks for the numbers to stabilize. And by implementing something with just 10 days of data, you are potentially implementing a false positive, which is going to actually cost you money. So we tell them that, listen, if you want to be responsible, we will not sign off on this. You can do it yourself. So usually when they hear that, they're like, okay, let's wait. But I think a lot of it is just about education and helping them understand the risks involved in doing these kind of things. Yes, they are impatient, but we have to get clean data. So we need the test to tell us when it's a good time to implement.
And have you come across any clients, Rishi, which are playing the valuation game and not the value game? Like they are just trying to scale like crazy. They are not worrying about repeat customer rate. They are not worrying about customer feedback a lot. What they just want is to make enough money so they can keep the ads running, and they just want to scale. They want to play
Yeah,
the valuation game.
We don't work with such hyper growth types of brands. Usually we like to, not like to, but just typically, because we are so focused on working with the founder of the company, because we are trying to tell their founder story, which means we need access to the founder. We work with companies where the founder is leading marketing, and by definition, no hyper growth company's founder can lead marketing because they're growing too fast. So typically our customers are doing, between 4 million and 15 million in sales, sometimes even less than that. So they're very much founder driven. So we don't actually come across companies, or none of our clients are companies that are like spending, like having like uh you know where they haven't even figured out the unit economics, right? Where they're like just basically focused on acquisition. So that's not something that we encounter as much.
And what do you think? Is it going to be more difficult for these people who are playing the valuation game?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I don't, I think so. I think advertising in general, there are two trends that are happening. One is advertising is becoming more expensive. More importantly, advertising is also becoming difficult to hyper target because of privacy laws, which means that it's actually going to be harder to hack the system, which means that I think it's going to cause some kind of correction. But I'm
And
not
have you
an
also seen, Rishi, the kind of clients you work with? You generally optimize them, the story of the brand. So
yeah.
a customer who is buying a product from your client, then they are generally more involved. So they're generally more into the product. They're more into the company. So do you see that trickling down to retention marketing as well? The repeat customer rates, the repeat purchases. Does that also trickle down to that?
I believe so. I believe so. My thesis is that if you can get more people, let's say that your repeat purchase rate is 20%. Well, if you have 100 people, and that means 20%, 20 people will be repeat buyers. Well, if you can more effectively convert the top of the funnel from 100 to 200, technically, if maybe it's not going to remain 20%, maybe it's 18%, but that's 36 repeat buyers, right? Based on that math, that's still more than 20. So I think that ultimately, if you are doing a better job converting at the top of the funnel, you should, all of your other metrics should also improve correspondingly.
Hmm. Agree on that. Cool. So, Rishi, this was an amazing session.
Thank you.
This was an amazing session. I was really curious to talk to you because, again, we stay around the Shopify ecosystem. This is a great ecosystem. I love this ecosystem because I talk to a lot of people in this podcast and learn a lot about different stuff that I personally want to learn. And through that, I believe my viewers are also learning something. Before we wrap this up, Rishi, I want people to know about you, what you do, how they can seek your help.
Sure. I am, if you're on LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So I share everything I know on LinkedIn. I also have a newsletter where every week I share my conversion insights. You can find it at frictionless-commerce.com/join. So frictionless-commerce.com/join. And if you go to my website, which is frictionless-commerce.com, you will be able to see my entire philosophy. You'll see tons of case studies. I think I would encourage people to see the case studies, because they will show exactly how our process works. But yeah, I mean, that's the best way for them to keep in touch with me. And if someone has any questions, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I love talking about this stuff.
Amazing, Rishi.
Thank
The
you.
I would surely recommend people to go and watch Rishi's website. That in itself is that in itself shows how his ideologies are different, and the website in itself tells you a lot about what he speaks or what he spoke in this entire podcast. So, like, just give it a look. Just go check it out. It is really interesting. You'll love it. So, Rishi, one last thing before we wrap it up. I ask this to all my guests. You talk to a lot of customers, you talk to a lot of clients, you work with a lot of businesses, you have seen a lot of consumers. So, tell us what consumers really care about.
I think customers care about, the thing that they care about the most is value for money. They want to buy, they care about buying products that are truly great and can do what is being promised that they can do, and gives them good value for money. I think that's the thing that we focus on communicating all the time.
Hmm. Really well summed up. Value for money. So it's also not like people generally believe value for money seems cheap. value
No,
for
not that.
money, it can be like, for a customer buying a $2,500 product can also be value for money if they believe that
That's right.
the product is worth more than $5,000.
Buying a private jet is actually great value for money. No, no, seriously, seriously, it's a great value for money depending on what your lifestyle is. If you're the
Right.
kind of business where you are traveling the country 3 times a week to meet clients, I think it's much more practical to go buy a private jet. So that's the way. It's all about impact. How is this creating a multiplier effect in the customer's life? Is the question.
Mm. Amazing. So, Rishi, thank you so much. It was amazing talking to you. I think we have spent about an hour, and it was great talking to you, especially talking about consumer psychology. Because, again, I'm repeating myself again and again, but I'm not worried about it because this is really important. And I want people to understand, because the whole ethos of this podcast is to help people understand what's more important, not stay in the fluff, and not try to master some bells and whistles which keep changing every day. Instead, focus on the fundamentals which will help your band grow. So, guys, if you are watching this episode, I hope you liked it. I'll recommend you to go and check out Rishi, what he does on LinkedIn. He shares a lot of amazing stuff on LinkedIn, and also check out his website. So, like, drop a comment if you like this episode. If you want to talk to Rishi, you can do it, and I'll leave the links of other podcast episodes also, so you can go and watch. So, yeah, that's it, guys, for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next episode.